Dolphins lose in embarrassing fashion to the Seattle Seahawks in NFL Week 3. No Tua Tagovailoa. Skylar Thompson started at quarterback and did not finish the game. He did leave with injury. We'll talk about some of the injury news and notes coming up in just a second. But Dolphins lose 24-3. They really got nothing going offensively, and it was a tough watch, if we're just going to be completely honest, about how much they struggled at that end. But the one thing that I want to say before we even talk about some of the stats, we talk about some of the injuries, I think this was an embarrassing showing. Not from the Miami Dolphins, although it was, but from the coaching staff of this team. Mike McDaniel, Frank Smith, the two guys that had to work on the offensive game plan. You had a week and a half to game plan for the Seattle Seahawks because you played on Thursday night. So you got an extended time to be able to make a game plan for Skylar Thompson because you knew he was going to be the starter the entire week and more, and you simply couldn't do that. You couldn't muster up a touchdown. You started with the ball at the 4-yard line down in this game early on. It was 10-0. You had the ball, and you had to settle for 3 because you couldn't pick up 4 yards after the Kader Kohu interception off a tip. Like, that is embarrassing. I don't care who's playing quarterback. You can't get 4 yards in 4 plays if you wanted to. That is an absolute joke. And then again, you get the ball down 17-3. It's 10 minutes left in the ball game. You have the ball first and goal at the 3. Tim Boyle at quarterback. And you can't get 3 yards in 4 plays? Like, this offense, as hyped up as it is, I get no quarterback, no Tua. But you have to be able to get 3 and 4 yards no matter what. That is just incompetence at its highest level. And I have called Mike McDaniel one of the best offensive play callers, one of the offensive brightest minds in our game. And I still believe, in the terms of creativity, he is that. But I am concerned, to say the least, that the Dolphins have scored in 3 games 20 points. Was it 13 the week before, 7 against Buffalo, and then 3 today? It has not been good. They have not scored a touchdown in 7 quarters. They haven't. They scored one in the first quarter against Buffalo and then have not scored one since. And they only scored 2 touchdowns in week 1 against Jacksonville. This offense has been anemic. And I don't blame the entire injuries. I blame some of these play calls and decisions and inabilities to pick up yards in short situations. 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 3rd and 2, 1st and goal from the 3. The fact that you're not able to pick up these short yard situations is an indictment on your staff to not be able to get the right plays, in your scheme to not be able to block, and then your personnel of not being able to get enough offensive line movement and pushes. I just think this offense has been terrible through 3 games so far. And I get it. You're not missing Tua for 5 of the quarters. But you simply still haven't seen positive steps in that direction. Because, listen, Tua played basically 3 quarters against Buffalo, and you still were only able to muster up a touchdown. Like, it just has been ugly, ugly, ugly football for the Miami Dolphins. And I could not be more disappointed in this coaching staff not having this team ready to play and not having the right staff. And you want to talk about coaching as well here real quick. The Dolphins committed, I think, 12 accepted penalties. Now, the officials in this game were absolutely horrific because the Seahawks also had 11 penalties. But not having your team ready to go. Are you kidding me? And I'd also like to say what the hell is up with Crossman in the special teams, because there was a flag on almost every single punt in this game, whether it be on Miami punting the ball away or them returning the ball. There was just way too many flags in this ball game, and I'm just could not be more upset this coaching staff. I get it. You didn't have the better personnel in this ball game, but you got to be able to make it up. And I would actually argue that you might have had a better personnel, because outside of the quarterback play, I thought you were an extremely good football team. That evidently is not the case, and it was very tough to see. Let me know your thoughts and one-word reaction to this game down in the comment section. One word for me, embarrassing. The coaching staff just absolutely horrific. It was a bad sight to see. All right, before we get into some of the stats, I do want to talk about some of the injuries that we had. Obviously, Skylar Thompson left this game in the 3rd quarter. Tim Boyle replaced him as the quarterback midway through, going into that 4th quarter. Skylar Thompson left with a chest injury, so he left and went right to the locker room, was ruled out. So quarterback already thin for Miami, even more thin with Thompson being injured. I expect, and I will say this, I said this before the game, that if the offense struggled, I think Tyler Huntley is going to be your starting quarterback in week 4 at home against Tennessee. I can almost guarantee that now. Assuming Tyler Huntley is able to pick up the playbook, Mike McDaniel will go to him to be your starter in week 4 at home against Tennessee next Monday Night Football, because I think he's better than Tim Boyle, and I think you're going to be able to have a more creative offense and package with Skylar or Huntley in at QB, so I expect him to be your starter in week 4. But there also is some other injuries. Terron Armstead, Kendall Fuller. We'll talk about them more in depth here in just a second. But we do got to show some love to our sponsor on today's show, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app, and I use them on a daily basis. I make picks on every Dolphins game. I make picks on other games as well, and you can get a really cool deal when you use code CLNS when creating an account. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app with more than 5 million active members, and unlike other apps, you just play against the numbers. You don't play against other users. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And Prize Picks allows you to win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks based on how you do your entry. Demons, goblins, there's so much creativity, which is what I love the most. And Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If a player leaves in the first half and can't return due to injury, your entry still is good. Your picks are still alive. So get started with Prize Picks today. They're the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks. When you download the app, get $50 instantly when you play 5. Don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Shout out to Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's get back to talking about some of these injuries because, man, oh, man, oh, man, was it a disappointing sight to see with these injuries. Kendall Fuller left the game in the first half with a concussion, and he was ruled out, so he didn't play the entire second half. And it didn't help that Storm Duck also got hurt. Now, he did return to the game with a shoulder injury, but there was at least a couple of defensive possessions there where your cornerbacks were Saron Neal, Jalen Ramsey, and Cater Code. And it simply just wasn't feasible to be able to shut down that offense the way you'd like them to with that type of secondary. Now, I do actually think the Dolphins defense played relatively well. They allowed 24 points, but if you take away the 71-yard touchdown to DK Metcalf, they didn't really allow much. And if your offense is able to sustain more drives and get in the end zone and score points, like I think there's a better conversation to be had about the Dolphins defense playing a lot better and doing extremely well. So it's a tough way to evaluate this defense, but there was a lot of injuries. Davi Long Jr. also left with a hamstring injury. He didn't play the final quarter or like half a quarter, but why would he? The game was out of hand. So there's injuries to be had, obviously with Kendall Fuller, Davi Long Jr. on the defensive side, and then you've got some other injuries as well on the offensive side. We talked about Skylar Thompson. Terron Armstead left this game with a eye injury. He was questionable with a shoulder injury, played, but ultimately the Miami Dolphins had to go to Kendall Lamb for the entire second half because Armstead had an eye injury and did not return. It's unfortunate that Terron Armstead is always hurt. It's actually unfathomable how hurt he is all the time. And it's like, come on, man. Are we serious right here? How are you always going to be hurt? But before we get out of here, we're going to rattle off some stats. Tim Boyle looked better as the quarterback, in my opinion. 7 of 13, 79 yards. No turnovers. Skylar Thompson was 13 of 19, 100 yards. He got sacked 5 times. The Dolphins allowed 6 sacks. This offensive line is a legit issue. We're going to continue that conversation on them as well throughout this weeks ahead. Achane had 30 rushing yards on 11 carries. It wasn't pretty there. Jalen Wright had 2 carries for 17 yards. Tyreek Hill, leading receiver, 40 yards, 3 catches. Waddle, 4 catches, 26. Like, the fact that your 2 wide receivers weren't able to make anything happen was just a disappointing sight to see. You needed them to show up. I said it during the week. You need Tyreek Hill to prove to people that he was the best wide receiver. He's the best player in football as he was voted on by his peers. And I know it. People are going to say Tua is out. Tua is out. But you can't seriously look at me and say if you're the best player in football voted by your peers, you got to be more of a game changer. Simply have to be, and he wasn't at all. All right, that's going to do it for today's game breakdown. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because, well, we're going to have you covered on everything surrounding the Miami Dolphins. And even though it's been a disaster, we'll still have you covered this entire week. And we will also be back next week with a watch party at home against the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football. So make sure you join the channel, hit that sub button, and I'll see you then.